And here we are. Welcome back to the Richard Sophomore, where we never sit out. We're your hosts, MD and CD. What is going on? It is the off season. Still, we got a long way to go, right? But what's not far away is us covering more coaches and more transfer portal players. Isn't that right?
That's right. It never stops for us.
It just never stops. Today on the agenda, we're going to be talking about three coaches per usual. We're going to talk about Jed Fish, Brent Brennan, and Major Applewhite making his major comeback. Look, if you like the content, like the video. That's the simple rule that we have over here. And make sure to smash that subscribe button if you want to listen to more content. It doesn't do anything to you. It doesn't hurt you. It just helps us. So we thank you so much for your support. If you're listening on Spotify, make sure you follow us. Give us a 5-star rating if you really like us. And if you listen on Spotify, consider listening on YouTube as well. If you're on YouTube, consider listening on Spotify. If you're driving in the car, you don't want to see this giant like infection thing that I have on my face. You can just listen on Spotify. We'll have all the episodes posted there as well. So thank you guys again. I mean, NFL playoffs this weekend. That was kind of the highlight of the football world, but there's some interesting things. A lot of new coaching movement. A lot of new coaching movement this past weekend. I'm excited to get into some of that. So, all
Let's
right,
go.
let's go now. Let's first talk about Jed Fish. You guys knew it was coming. This started when Saban retired. Kalen DeBoer went to Washington. Jed Fish was in the conversation for, I think, a lot of jobs this offseason and ended up landing in Washington, which I think is a pretty decent spot. So, if you're just a college football fan, right? Even if you're a hardcore college football fan, you might not know exactly who Jed Fish is, aside from just being the coach at Arizona. This guy, he's coached at like 18 different places. He's been everywhere. He's only 47. He's coached at 18 different places. That's absurd. 7 of those NFL teams. He's he was coaching at Minnesota for a year. He coached at oh, thought I had this written down. But he's been in a lot of places, is the point. And he's actually had some success. He's had some success, especially in the NFL, working with quarterbacks, being the OC. Well, actually, I don't know if he was the OC ever in the NFL. I think he was like a co-offense coordinator for the Rams when they went on that Super Bowl run with Jared Goff and then lost in the Super Bowl. But either way, he's got quite a resume. He's got quite a resume. What is he leaving? He's leaving Arizona, which is a team that he brought to 10-3 for the first time in, gosh, who knows how long. And they won the Alamo Bowl against Oklahoma. They had one of the better seasons that Arizona's had in the last 25 years. He goes to Washington, a team that just made the national championship. Expectations are as high as ever for that program, and that program's moving to the Big Ten, right? A lot of people were saying that, why did Jed Fish leave? Why did he leave? CD, I want you to maybe paint a picture for us why, one, Washington is probably a better job than Arizona, and two, there are special circumstances going on right now that maybe aren't the best for a potential Arizona staff member.
Well, yeah, Arizona has been in recent conversation, right, for the wrong reasons, right? And obviously, a lot has been made of their debt in their athletic department and school and whatnot. We do have a YouTube short that Matthew made that go check that out. That's really cool. Really well done by Matthew about all that. But yeah, so their AD just got fired today as we're making this video Monday, January 22nd, about literally an hour and a half ago. And yeah, Jed Fish decides, first of all, he's going to get a massive contract extension in terms of longevity and then also like annual salary. He's going to make almost $8 million a year, which Arizona could never afford in the state they are at right now. Obviously, game-changing, life-changing money for him and his family. And also the chance to compete in the Big Ten, which everyone is trying to get to those Power 2 conferences, especially those Tier 1 and Tier 2 jobs within those conferences, right? Like, would he have left, you know, Arizona and the Big 12 to go play at Illinois or Indiana? And all due respect to both those programs, like, no, he would not have. Washington is a really, really good job. you've seen a lot of people have a lot of success there, right? You think about guys like um uh I forgot
Chris Peterson,
Chris
Kalen
Peterson, thank
DeBoer,
you. In the
not
90s, they
Jimmy
had all
Lake.
no, but even in the 90s, they had guys going. Don James, thank you. Don James in the 90s had multiple Rose Bowl wins back in the Pac-10 there. This is a good historic program, a lot of talent on the West Coast that Washington can tap into a good enough NIL structure for them there. And obviously he got a lot of guarantees in his contract that made it very favorable, which are little, in terms of NIL and coaching salaries and whatnot for him. But it's going to be a tough transition, right? Like not only did he leave a sour taste in Arizona fans and players and communities' minds, but also he's heading to a place, a lot of changes happening, right? They're going to the Big Ten, like you mentioned. A lot of players on that team that took them to the national championship, right, are going to the NFL draft or in the transfer portal, especially on the offense side of the ball. And now he's bringing in, and his staff got gutted. Kalen DeBoer's staff got gutted. A lot of them in over in Alabama as well. Jed Fish is bringing over 7 or 8 guys from Arizona, offensive coordinators, wide receivers coach Kevin Cunning, some guys on the defense, um, Jimmy Daugherty. So a lot of good names, good recruiters on that staff, and developers themselves. But yeah, Washington is a better job than Arizona, but it sucks. It sucks. It's bad timing for Arizona. We were huge fans of them all year, right? Noah Fafita, we were thinking that this year, yes, it was very surprising what they did. They kind of got hot a little bit too late. They lost some games early in the year that they could have won and maybe pushed for a Pac-12 title. But hey, this was the year that was supposed to be for 2024. Arizona fans, just like Buffalo, just like South Alabama, just like San Jose State and other programs, thought they had survived coaching carousel this offseason. And then all of a sudden, the bombshell that Nick Saban drops and retires, you've seen that chain reaction happen. And all these coaching jobs open, all these programs get upheaved and changed, and everything that happens with all that. And it sucks for Arizona. And Jedfish, I was hoping he would gear up for a run because of the talent they had there. But in terms of for Washington, this is a heck of a hire. You mentioned it. We're huge Jetfish fans, right? I get it. You didn't love how he left Arizona if you're an Arizona fan, but hey, he can really recruit. He can really develop guys. It might take him a couple years with the state of the program right now, but with the resources Washington has, moving to Big Ten, the salaries and the TV stipends that they'll get from the Big Ten networks, like they're gonna be doing great. I love this move for Washington.
Yeah, I think it was probably the best available hire on the board. But like, it's interesting. Like, what when we talk about, we'll be giving our grades out right for Jed Fish in just a bit, but we talk about rating relative to expectation, right? What is the expectation now at Washington? Like I think the fan base has this expectation that they can do it, that they can win a national championship. But the other part of me, that the logical part of me says that was really like there were a bunch of sixth year COVID seniors on that team. And you're not going to have a lot of COVID seniors. A program like Washington, they have to recruit better. If they're going to
Yep.
compete and try to win the Big Ten, like legitimately try to win the Big Ten, you need to recruit like Oregon, and they don't want to hear that at all, but you have to recruit like Oregon. You have to recruit, not necessarily the level has to be maybe like Penn State. I mean, you got to have a better recruiting class. And now Jed Fish is a pretty good recruiter himself. I mean, he brought Arizona out of like the absolute dumpsters, and he put together some pretty good classes there at Arizona, which is, hard to do given the state of the program that he was handed. But that has to happen, right? So for me, when I look at Washington, what is my expectation going to the Big Ten? Huskies fans, you're not going to want to hear this, but my expectation is winning 8, maybe 9 games every year. Maybe like you get a good draw in the Big Ten, maybe you can win 10 games, right? That's
Yeah,
just how it is.
everyone has to tamper their expectations because of how juiced these conferences are going to be and how dense they are. Washington's schedule gets significantly harder, at least maybe a win, another loss or a loss and a half on their schedule based on like typical Pac-12 years. I get this year was different. It was super deep. It was really good all around. But you're moving the Big Ten this year, right? You're bringing over some of the elite of the Pac-12, and then you got to play Ohio State, who's loaded as ever and committed as ever. Michigan, obviously off a national title. Penn State, Michigan State's got their act together. Nebraska's getting better under Matt Rule. Wisconsin's recruiting well. Minnesota and Iowa have been good the past couple of years. This is a pretty loaded Big Ten you're coming into where you're not going to have off nights, right? And also you're going to have to travel across the country and about half your conference games. Like that's going to be extremely hard on this team and this program, you get it. You said it right. I think 9 wins is a good year, especially in year one. Like 7, 8 wins is kind of what I'm expecting because of all the turnover that's happening there. And I believe in Jed Fish, right? I believe he can get it done eventually. You mentioned the recruiting; he has to do better. He has to recruit better than even he did at Arizona, but I think he can with the resources. I hope they're committed a little bit more than the previous staff to recruiting the high school ranks. But you mentioned it, yeah. Like this year was lightning in a bottle. You had a Heisman contender trophy, or Heisman finalist at quarterback, first round pick kind of guy, Michael Penix. You had 3 elite wide receivers. You had a Joe Moore offensive line. A lot of guys on your team that were those COVID 6 year players that benefit teams like you and Michigan a lot more than other teams like Texas and Alabama and Georgia. And so you had chance and opportunity to really rise to the top there and get it done with an elite coaching staff, with an elite scenario in a pretty tough Pac-12 where you got some breaks, playing, getting Oregon at home and then obviously beating them again, which didn't really matter. But yeah, I don't know. I think the expectation of being in the college football playoff every year, I do think is a little bit overstated, just because that's how hard it is can be in the Big Ten if you're not Ohio State or Oregon, because they're recruiting that well. If Washington starts recruiting in a top 15 rate, a top 18 rate every year, then maybe we can consider it with the staff that has put together there. But yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I have their schedule actually pulled up here. Um, Let me get to it right now. It's a tough schedule. It is a tough schedule. Like, sure, like you play Washington State, and you could barely get by the Apple Cup there with that talent that you had. I get that one's on the road, and this one's gonna be in Seattle. I get it, and that does make a big difference. But then also, like you play Michigan, you go to Iowa. You better pray that's not a night game there. Better pray it's not a night game. You get USC, you get at Penn State, UCLA, at Oregon. Like a lot of your toughest games are on the road. So it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting also to see who's playing quarterback there because Austin Mack transferred. Will Rogers is no longer coming to Washington. So Noah Fafita didn't come to Arizona with Jed Fish. It's going to be very, very interesting, especially year one. I believe in Jed Fish, and if they're patient with Jed Fish, I believe he can get it done and have this program humming at a level that they want it to be humming at. But circumstances are just tough. So because of that, this hire is a really good hire. I don't know a lot of hires that would have been better than this hire. I'll give it a B just because the circumstances and the state of the program and the resources that they have. I think the fan base expectation and my expectation are a little bit different. So I'm going to meet them in the middle, and I'm going to say that the expectation is 9 wins, I guess. If you meet us in the middle here, I'll say that he can meet that more times than not, which is kind of crazy, but there are a lot of Big Ten teams that you can draw that you can win. Like they draw Rutgers, Northwestern, Indiana. So they still drew some pretty good ones. But I just don't know. I'll say he'll meet the expectation. I'm not gonna say he's gonna exceed that. I don't think he might go his whole tenure and not win a Big Ten championship. And I think that's fine. I think that's totally fine.
It can still be a success, especially with the way the 12-team format is. You don't have to win your conference if you're in the Big Ten and the SEC to make it into the college football playoffs. Yeah, I'm with you here. I mean, 8, 9 wins, especially in year one. I think once he gets the ball rolling and the program humming in his direction, built that team back up, get some depth on his roster, doesn't have to rely on and patching an offseason transfer portal roster, you name it. I think he really gets going. He's bringing in a guy like Demon Williams, right? He's a guy from Arizona, was a 4-star recruit quarterback coming in this year and rolling, and he obviously is bringing him over to Washington. He's a guy. Do you really want a true freshman to start for you? In the Big Ten, I don't know if I want that. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm gonna go with you. I think B plus, just because I lean on the side of him, the upside once he gets the ball rolling. I do think he can
And this
start.
is not a knock on Jed Fish either. Like you were talking to the guy that like Jed Fish was like my number 2 guy that I wanted at Texas A&M easily, easily,
Yeah,
and we didn't get him. So like this is a really freaking good coach. We're mostly talking about circumstances, right? And like what that is and trying to taper expectations. for this program moving forward.
Let's be realistic too about the coaching search. Not only did you not get first cracks at a lot of guys like Mike Elko, like Mark Stoops, and guys in the first window that opened, and then once Bama, locked everybody else down because everyone signed extensions after Bama was interested in them, right? We all know how that went down with Jimmy Sexton getting his guys paydays, but like all those top guys, who would you have wanted other than Jed Fish, right? Mike Norvell? No, he just signed a massive contract extension. You're not getting Dan Lanning with his buyout. Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, no thanks. Steve Sarkisian, ain't no way. Like this was the best hire I think you could have done with a crappy situation. You know what? Like, what? Less than a week after losing the national championship game, your coach leaves for Alabama, and now you're left reeling with players in the portal and whatnot. Jed Fish is a guy that's familiar on the West Coast, knows how to win games. This is about as good as I could have done, right? Like that's applaud the Washington's, athletic department for getting it done quickly and swiftly and getting him the payday he needs and getting the language he wanted into the contract to make him succeed at a place like Washington. So yeah, I like it. Not will it be tough year one? Yeah. Like Matthew said, give him time. Have patience with Jed Fish. It will work there at Washington. We saw it took him 3 years at Arizona. It might take him 2 to 3 years at Washington too. It's not going to happen overnight.
Speaking of Arizona, let's talk about who Arizona replaced Jed Fish with. His name would be Brent Brennan. Sorry. He was San Jose State's coach, right? I tend to like this hire, And what's interesting is that with the financial crisis of this program and what it's in, firing the AD, even though the president probably should have been fired, you're he's still getting a higher salary pool for his assistants than Jed Fish did amidst the
And
financial crisis. So that is a program that is willing to invest in its football program because, like, look at some of these other programs. Like, it pays dividends. It pays for things. It pays for schools. It pays for textbooks. It pays for laboratories. It pays for libraries. It pays for other things. It pays for dorms. Like, that's what football can do. That's the power of that to any Division One program.
well, yeah, and this what a nice little parting gift from Dave Hickey, right? I believe that's how you say his last name, Dave Hickey, the athletic director from Arizona. Right, hired him what 7 days ago, and now you got a canned, I guess last night from when you guys were watching this video. But Brent Brennan, yeah, and what's nice about that is yes, you mentioned that language he put in to get that high assistant salary coaching pool, which is massive for a program like Arizona, who's gonna realistically is gonna get poached really good talent away from him, and he can bring in a guy like Dwayne Akina, which I know Arizona fans are super familiar with. He was the reason for the defensive turnaround this year. He's been at Arizona a ton, an elite staff member, good recruiter, relationship guys, all that good stuff. But also Brent Brennan, he's coming from San Jose State where he was not making a ton of money. So you didn't have to give him this massive, $5, $6, $7 million contract, right? That you can't really afford. But now you can save money on the hire while making a really good hire, who I thought was the number one choice. It made sense all along. I'm glad they went with it. And then also fill out other places in your program to let Brent Brennan succeed, and not set him up for failure. Take the checks, take the losses kind of guy. No, Brent Brennan wants to win. So he's coming there on a little paycheck discount, but also writing in language for himself to be able to succeed and set up a program around him that lets him thrive in the new Big 12.
Yeah. So who is Brent Brennan? Let's just say he has coached everyone on the West Coast. San Jose State, notably, he was there more than one time, but most recently as a head coach. He was at Oregon State. He was at Cal Poly. He was at Arizona a while back. He was at Washington, Hawaii. Also, his wife is an Arizona graduate, and she was very, very ecstatic when Brent Brennan took the job. So he's a UCLA grad, right? And you're thinking like, oh, is this just like a stepping stone, like to get the UCLA job once Chip Kelly gets fired next year? I know there's talks that Chip Kelly might take an OC job in the NFL, but this year, but like I think Brent Brennan wants to stay here, which
Well,
is good
more
for
importantly, his
Arizona.
wife does. His wife, we all know happy wife,
Yes.
happy life. Like Miss Terry was happy at Alabama. And so when Texas came knocking on Saban's door, back in the early 2010s, like Miss Terry was enjoying it at Tuscaloosa. And that was a massive reason why he stayed there. Like that's really awesome for Arizona.
Yeah. So in his time at San Jose State, San Jose State is not historically a great program. Like it is not an elite contender in the Mountain West. In fact, it has one conference championship in its history, and it was under Brent Brennan. Was it in the COVID year? Yes. But did you also have Nick Starkel at quarterback? Yes. So he won Mountain West Conference Championship. Starkel as quarterback.
By the way,
It's not
can I
an
say something about that? That was in California, where the rules of COVID were so hard to deal with, more than other places in the Mountain West, like Boise State, like Wyoming, UNLV, programs like that. Like that was a such a tough job. I get it. Some people don't count the COVID year, right? But you have to give him credit for what he did that year. That was super impressive, given the scenario, what happened, given the lack of resources, and given like it was so hard to win in the state of California there, and he did it very well.
Yeah, and everyone can do a quick Wikipedia search and be like, Brent Brennan, what this guy's 34 and 48 as a head coach. What is he doing? Coaching a Power Five football team. Yeah. So he went 3 and 22 in his first year, 2 years at San Jose State. Did Jed Fish not go 1 and 11? And then like did he go 5 and 7? 1 and 11 his first year at Arizona? Like, come on. Like the dude was building a program. And then he came back 5 and 7 year, and then the 7 and 1 Mountain West Conference Championship win. And then he's consistently been around 5 to 7 wins every single season with San Jose State, including getting low key robbed out of a chance to compete for the Mountain West Conference Championship this year because of the weird tiebreaker that comes down to the computer rankings from multiple websites, which is unbelievable. I thought he did a
Wild.
fantastic job coaching this year. I mean, fantastic job coaching San Jose State. So I really like this. So when we talk about grades, giving the grades to each hire, okay, gotta talk about expectations. We always do. We mention it every time. So, CD, what are the expectations for a program like Arizona? And I know it's different because they're headed to the Big 12. So, what are the expectations?
Well, so let's be honest here. First of all, it is a very tough job to win at because of everything happening right now and going on with the Board of Regents, with the athletic director, with the president's financial situation in Arizona, which Matthew did a really good job outlining in a video and a short. Go check that out. Very cool, fascinating stuff there. And Jed Fish, what he did this year was an anomaly, right? Rich Rodriguez, his best year there was 10-4, right? That was all the way back in 2014. They've had 10 wins, what, once, twice in this millennium, right? The last time they were above 12 wins or above 10 wins was back with Dick Tomey in the 1990s, right? Mike Stoops was there, Rich Rod, Kevin Sullivan, guys that are pretty high profile names and not a lot of winning there, right? Let's be honest here. What Jed Fish did this year and gearing up for a year was pretty impressive what they did there. That fast a turnaround in a very competitive Pac-12. Now they're moving to the Big 12, right? Where you have a ton of teams, right? All in what seems to be like that middle tier of just everybody kind of just smashed together, and it's kind of just a random number generator, which I believe the Cover Three podcast loves to talk about. We're just like, who knows what's actually going to happen here, game to game, because the talent level is so evenly matched week to week with everybody in the Big 12. Brent Brennan takes over an Arizona team that's pretty darn talented, and it sounds like a lot of those guys are staying. Right? You mentioned Jed Fish leaves, and it's devastation for Arizona. Amidst the financial crisis, everything going on with the program in the state, and now Jed Fish leaves, and now you're like, oh, we saw what happened to Bama and all those guys leaving, Washington, all those guys leaving, and then Jed Fish leaves, and now Brent Brennan comes in, and a lot of those players stayed. Fafita and McMillan, a lot of those guys want to win and gearing up for this year because they know how special it is. Right? Brent Brennan, I believe, is the right guy to do it for them. Expectations for this year a little bit different than they are, I think, in years beyond because of the talent level that's on this roster right now. Let's say hopefully nothing else changes. We'll see what happens. They are losing a couple guys to the portal, but in my opinion, like Jonah Coleman, really good player. Prysock, a very good corner. Raymond Polito, very good offensive lineman. But other than that, it's pretty good damage control from Brent Brennan's staff, which he made a point to keep everyone on that roster there. I don't know, man. I think 7 to 8 wins you have to be really happy with a couple years popping in between and having a chance. Right, the Big 12 championship, right? They're an auto bid as of right now to the college football playoffs. So like the door is wide open for you to make the playoffs every couple of years if you do it right, if you build up to it, if you get the quarterbacks right, coordinators, you keep teams together. Your developmental program at Arizona, you got to recruit the high school ranks pretty well. Yeah, I'm gonna go 7, 8 wins here. That seems pretty reasonable. It's actually a little on the high end compared to what you've been in the Pac-12, but I think with Brent Brennan coming in, moving to the Big 12, you have chances to win. And with the language and the commitment to the football program amidst all the financial crisis going on, I believe 7-8 wins is a pretty reasonable expectation, in my opinion, for Arizona.
Yeah, I would say like my expectation is probably more 6 or 7 wins because of the state of the program and also like historically, right? Like that's like it was make a bowl game, we're happy, you know? But I mean, I'm looking at the schedule and I'm like imagining more schedules like this in the future. Again, I'll still stand by. I believe the expectation is 6, 7 wins. Probably 7 wins is better. But you got your toughest games in next year's schedules at Kansas State, at Utah. Every other game is either a reasonable, manageable game or it's at home, right? Arizona State at home, Colorado at home, Texas Tech at home, Houston at home, West Virginia at home. And then your road games, other than Utah and Kansas State, are BYU, which is tough playing Pro Bowl. Okay, but that's a program that you can beat. TCU and UCF, all programs that you can beat. It just like if I'm replaying this over and over again and what I believe Brent Brennan is and what I think he can build this team to be in this program. I mean, it's a great geography. He's a great coach. There's a lot of things that are working for them aside from the financial crisis, but they're investing in Brent Brennan still amidst the crisis. So I'm gonna give this grade an A because I think he soars expectations. I think that Arizona's becoming gonna become a perennial player in the Big 12 a few years from now. I know that they have that giant financial crisis, but they're still investing in Brent Brennan. They gave him a big assistant pool to work with. We'll see how the NIL works. If the NIL's the boosters are going to start cutting checks for players, or if they're going to have to cut the checks to save the athletic department, or are they just going to cut other sports? Like, are they going to cut some of the Olympic sports in order to save some money and use football as like kind of a vaulting platform to kind of revive this athletics program? I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. All I know is Brent Brennan's a good coach. I think he fits at Arizona. And I think Arizona's got a manageable schedule the next couple of years and a good geography. Boom. That's it.
Yeah, that's got me sold enough to give this higher an A as well. I mean, this is about as good as you could have done. Late in the cycle, you don't find hires like this. To be honest, like the whole transition from, Washington, DeBoer to Bama, Fish to Washington, Brent Brennan to Arizona, like those three programs with everything that happened, right? You have to be pretty darn happy with how your athletic department handled it and being able to find out a very, very good candidate. Now, obviously, it's early. We have no idea to see how they play next year and years beyond that. But to be honest, like on paper, these hires look really, really awesome for all these programs. It's not often you see win-win-wins like this happening. And yeah, like Arizona, and like you said, Arizona did a really good job. Brent Brennan, I do believe all the tools are there to succeed in the Big 12 with his geography, with him being on the West Coast his whole career and being able to succeed there. And let's be honest, like his record too at San Jose State doesn't look as great because of the tough out of conference schedule they played and the fact that they didn't have the resources that a lot of other schools in the Mountain West had. Now you're Arizona, and yes, your athletic department and your school is not doing great funding wise, but your football program still has a good amount of money, right? And it still has all the resources to compete in the Big 12, in the new era Big 12. So I fully believe in Brent Brennan and the future of this program of Arizona. I know we've got a lot of Arizona fans listening and subscribers, and obviously I'm sure this is a time of anxiousness and unease for you guys. But I will say here, I think Matthew and I, have this here. I think this is a pretty good sign of things to come. Like I do think things will get worse before they get better this offseason, but I do think this is the future's up for at least the football program there at Arizona.
Let's talk about our last coach today. Let's talk about Major Applewhite making his major comeback. If you don't know who Major Applewhite was, he's been quite a couple places, right? If you kind of know the history of college football, like in the last 15 years, you should know who Major Applewhite is as a coach. If you go back further than that, you should probably know who Major Applewhite was as a player. He was a pretty okay quarterback for Texas, played under Mac Brown. He was a gritty guy. Gritty. Texas fans love him. So he ended up actually being a quarterbacks coach at Syracuse, basically right out of college. He kind of got promoted like really fast. Went to Rice, became the OC, and then right away, he was the offensive coordinator, believe it or not, the first one that Nick Saban hired at Alabama back in '07. If you can believe it or not. If you can believe it or not. And then Mac Brown ended up hiring him alongside Brian Harsin to be offense coordinator there. And then things happened. And then he eventually landed the job at Houston. We know how that turned out. You can call it not successful, but also, I don't know. He got fired. Let's put it that way. Went back to Alabama as an analyst, then was the South Alabama offensive coordinator, and now he's been promoted to the head coaching position. I think Major Applewhite did a really good job with Carter Bradley. I think he did a really good job with Gio Lopez. I think he's familiar with the program. I think the players are familiar with them. I like the hire. I can't help it. I can't help but I'm all right with this. Who like realistically, if you're South Alabama, like who would have been a much better hire? I can't think of a lot of guys off the top of my head that would have been legitimately better hires than Major Apple,
Well,
reasonable hires.
not only that, he's already on staff. Now, how often is a G5 program like South Alabama? Now, with all the respect to the Jaguars there, we love the Jaguars, right? Son of alumni. Like we love the
Yes,
Jaguars there
we
down
are
in Mobile,
sons
Alabama.
of some
Of it
the fighting Jags.
exactly. So
USA.
so so we love them down there in the Sun Belt. Now, how often do you have a guy on staff who has major college football experience, right? Not only at the coordinator level, but also at the head coaching level with Houston in taking over a program with unreasonable expectations after Tom Herman took that program to heights it's never seen. And then you went 8-4 and you got blown out by Army, okay, in a weird triple option bowl game, and you got fired. Like that's what happened there. Mitchell Applewhite,
Yeah.
like, that's the reality. You lost 70-14 in a bowl game. Now I get that. That's inexcusable. Sure. Does it mean you should be fired? I don't know, but I do believe if you're South Alabama and your head coach gets plucked by in-state powerhouse Alabama to be a defense coordinator, and there's nothing you can do about it this late in the cycle, and you have a chance to elevate from within, a guy like Major Applewhite, with not only the name and connections in the South that he has, but also the experience with the players to galvanize that roster and that offense. Like he can. Like I think this is awesome. I do think this is about as good as you could have done for South Alabama.
I agree. And so if you're a young college football fan, I mean, honestly, probably like around our age, if it wasn't for our dad going to South Alabama, we probably like wouldn't have such vivid memories. But if you this program is like 12 years old. All right. Like when we were kids, like little kids, South Alabama football did not exist. It did not exist. The biggest thing that they had was baseball over at Eddie Stanky Field. That's it. And it was a big deal at South Alabama. The baseball team was the biggest deal that they had there. And all of a sudden, what, 2012, 2013, I don't know, what, 2011, whatever it was, they had this program and they were not good. Look, they've had one bowl game in their program's history, and that was this past year against Eastern Michigan. That's one. And Kane Womack, as good as he did with that South Alabama, I mean, he took them to back-to-back bowl games, sure. But they have 3 years in the Sun Belt Conference total with a conference record of over 500, right? That's not like historically, like that's not great, That's not like elite. But here's the thing, because of the geography of South Alabama, and by the way, if you haven't been on South Alabama's campus, it is beautiful. Their rec centers are huge. Like this is a school that has money. This school has a pretty decent med school. Like the school has money. It's laying around there somewhere, and this is a school that can take off in the Sun Belt. I really, really, really believe that. They've had tons of talent there, like before, just not at every position all at once, if that makes sense. Now at the G5 level, what we've seen be really successful is you hit on a really good defense one year, right? And it happened to coincide with a good quarterback, and you do awesome, right? Or B, you just have a really, really effective offense that's well coached with talent that you bring in that fits your scheme, right? And Major Applewhite, like, I don't believe he had like tons of tools. Like he knows like how to fit into guy. Like he was a guy that needed to fit into a system as a quarterback himself, even though he was pretty good. I just I like the hire man. South Alabama is just a sleeping giant, dude, in the Sun Belt. Sleeping giant in the Sun Belt. The geography is so nice. They have money, man. Like they've had talented players there. NFL players are playing right now. Jalen Tolbert is playing in the NFL. Gerald Everett, or not Gerald Everett. What's his name?
Yeah, Gerald Everett.
Was it Gerald Everett? Gerald Everett,
Hmm.
freaking South Alabama one. Like who knows? Who knows? I mean, Colin Lacey one of these years might get drafted.
Khalil
Uh,
Jacobs going to Bama probably, and that staff there. Talented
yeah, I
linebacker for South Alabama. Yeah, no, to go off your point there, like this, they just got a brand new stadium a couple years ago, a $70 million stadium. That's beautiful, right on campus there in Mobile. Like their football facilities are awesome. Like we've seen, some of their training facilities. It is beautiful down there. For a G5 program and for a new G5 program, right? 2012, you mentioned, was their first inaugural year in a football team. Now they're getting their funding, they're getting their act together. They hired a guy like Joey Jones, a former Bama guy, just like to kind of get the program started. And he did a couple good things. Steve Campbell did not work out at all. Kane Womack was a really nice hire. And I do think Major Applewhite will build on that. Like he's called, they call him the son of the I-10 corridor, right? And I-10 is Interstate 10 that runs along the Gulf Coast there just because
right
he's been
through
all over
Mobile,
there.
right
Yeah,
through Mobile.
yeah, exactly, which is hilarious. He's actually named after Major Ogilvy, right? Who was a star running back for the Crimson Tide back in the day. So like Major Applewhite has ties down in the South, like we've mentioned. He's putting together a good staff. I guess he's keeping a good staff, really. Um, he's bringing in Paul Petrino from the MAC. I believe Central Michigan. He was up at the um. Oh my goodness, what's his name? What's the head coach there for Central Michigan? Former Bama OC.
I'm drawing a
Jim
blank.
McElwain. I'm so sorry. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
Jim
yeah, yeah,
McElwain.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
My apologies there. So there's the connection there with Bama. I believe they were on staff together at Bama, or he was the guy right after Major Applewhite. But yeah, he's promoting Rob Azell. All right, Rob Azell, the Rob Azell, Mr. Nick Saban impressionist himself. Which, by the way, if you've not seen that video, go look that up on YouTube. It is hilarious. And obviously Corey Batoon keeping there a very good defense himself. But also, you mentioned Major Applewhite doing more with less, what you have to do with the G5 program. He took over now a South Alabama offense that was terrible. That was in the 90s, 80s, and 90s as an offense in year one, but they were top 40, right? Very, very good. They got better this year. I believe they were top 30. Obviously, they're going to miss a guy like Colin Lacey, who was a stud, but Gio Lopez comes back another year with Major Applewhite. He was a young quarterback last year, kind of thrust in the fire, and we liked him. He did some good things there for him. I love the
Frisky was the
continuity.
word that I think we threw around,
We
which I
love the
like. I
continuity.
like a frisky left-handed G5 quarterback.
Yeah, you have to. And obviously, Major Applewhite has that continuity with them on staff, which is very important in terms of terminology and all that going forward for the development of a young quarterback. But also, like what Kane Womack did is he put together some pretty good talent, which you mentioned you can do at South Alabama. Yam Banks is a guy we'll talk about at Ole Miss. Marquise Robinson, I believe, is Arkansas. Jaden Voles and a couple other Power Five guys that are going to these Power Five programs because of the talent put together in the Sun Belt there at South Alabama. It can be done, and I do believe this is just fantastic. This is awesome.
Yeah, I genuinely give this grade. I'll give it an A minus. But like,
Well, what's the expectation in terms of like years or wins per year?
good point, good point. I think the expectation for South Alabama fans is like the 6-6, right? Like every other year make a bowl game at least, right? But I think it can be higher than that. Like I think this team can be a perennial problem in the Sun Belt for everyone. I think it can be. And I think Major Applewhite can do it. I think so. We talked about A's meeting or exceeding expectations, B's meeting expectations, C is not meeting expectations. I think I've only given out like one or two C's this whole coaching cycle. I think we've liked a lot of the guys that teams have gotten. And of course, you know, not all of those coaches that we gave uh, the grade meeting expectations are going to meet expectations. Not every single person is going to do that. But I really do believe in Major Applewhite. I think this was just a really, really good hire. I like it. Give me the A minus. It's going to exceed expectations, but like I guess if it was an A, for me that's like I feel like it's a sure thing,
Mhm.
and I just don't know if this program needs more time because it is still so young. But I do think Major Applewhite could make this program a problem in the Sun Belt, especially with the other coaching turnover at a lot of other those programs. So we'll see. What grade are you giving this?
Yeah, I'm right with you with an A minus. And like you said, I would give it an A plus just because of how excited I am. But I had to temper my expectations because, like you mentioned, I don't think it's a sure thing, especially at a G5 job like it is right now. Like it's hard to win, and it's harder now than ever because of the transfer portal and because of everything going on with conference realignment and all that good stuff. But yeah, you mentioned 6 to 7 wins. If you're making a bowl game for South Alabama, their fans are going to be happy. The boosters alumni is going to be happy there. And like you were really competitive this year in the out of conference, right? You manhandled Oklahoma State, which is the Big 12 runner up a year ago. And obviously you played James Madison tougher than just about anybody not named App State this year. And yeah, the pieces are there for him to do well. I do believe the only thing that does hesitate me is if he does hit, which I guess is a good problem to have if you're South Alabama, is I do believe there is, you know, a guy that he can climb up the so-called ladder of the coaching carousel, like we've seen a lot of these coaches do leave for quote unquote better jobs. And Major Applewhite's a guy that's probably itching to get back to, Power Five, Power Two football in the SEC there. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I do think all things considered this was awesome. This was a pretty easy, seamless hire and seamless transition, but it makes a ton of sense. And I believe it's going to hit for South Alabama fans.
Let's talk about their schedule too for 2024. They're out of conference, I believe, is actually quite manageable. You get North Texas, okay? Now, sure, they're getting Chandler Morris, but they're also losing a bit of talent there. And while I believe in Eric Morris, I I still feel like and yeah, sure they're in the American Conference. I think South Alabama's roster, I'd have to go and check it, but South Alabama's roster might be more talented than North Texas's. I can't tell you for sure because I haven't compared the two side by side, but it might be. It might be, if not right up there. Ohio, who loses a ton of players, right? So you lose Curtis Rourke, you lose Saya Bangura, you lose one of your better receivers, you lose some guys on defense. It's gonna be interesting. Then Northwestern State, you should win. LSU, you'll lose. Whatever. In your conference schedule, you don't draw Coastal Carolina. You don't draw James Madison. You do draw Troy, but you get them at home, and they have a new coach there. You do draw Georgia Southern, but you get them at home. You do draw Texas State, but you get them at home. Your biggest problem games, I think, are App State and Arkansas State on the road. And Louisiana and Southern Miss, I think, are certainly manageable. Louisiana won't be easy, but it'll certainly be a tough game, but they can win that game. So like I'm looking at the schedule and I'm like, they can win pretty much they can win any game on this schedule, I think, except the LSU game, right? So I don't know. I'm not saying it's gonna happen next year, but if Gio Lopez is as frisky as Gio Lopez is, it'd be hard not to believe in this team and what they can really do.
Well, and that's the thing we talked about with a lot. We've done a couple of these coaching carousel videos for the Sun Belt because of these coaches having a lot of success, namely James Madison and Troy moving on to other programs. There's a power gap that's at the top of the Sun Belt right now. You have no idea how those programs are going to look. Now, I believe in Bob Chesney a lot for James Madison. We'll see what Troy does there with their new coach, but there's some wins to be had at the top there. Nobody's unbeatable this year. Nobody's head and shoulders above anybody else in the Sun Belt. There's a lot of good teams, but there's also a lot of wins to be had. Like you mentioned, every game there in the Sun Belt is winnable. And a team like South Alabama with Major Applewhite could absolutely rise to the top there. And they do avoid, right, James Madison. They do avoid App State. They do
No,
avoid,
they get App State, but they avoid Coastal Carolina.
oh, I'm sorry, thank Coastal Carolina. So yeah, they do have a pretty favorable schedule, and yeah, I love to see the Jaguars get frisky down there in the Sun Belt.
Now we're done with coaches. Let's talk about transfer portal players. Let's talk about Noah Rogers. Noah Rogers. Remind me, was this player a top 40 player in the recruiting class? just a short while ago.
Yes. And other programs on three had him as a legit 5-star, top 30 guy.
Yeah. So he happens to be from Raleigh, North Carolina. Transfers from Ohio State to NC State to add to that wide receiver room that includes Casey Concepcion, who's already one of the better receivers in the country as a young player. You have a young core on this receiving squad that could be pretty dynamic. And you got an offensive coordinator like Robert and I that'll know how to use him, especially with a quarterback like Grayson McCall, who I think can get the ball to those guys. So I'm very, very, very excited about this. 6'2", 201, physical guy, can go get the ball. He's just a good player. There's a reason that Ohio State won him. And there was a reason that fans were upset when Noah Rogers transferred. A little homesick. Nothing wrong with getting a little homesick. Comes back home to play for his Wolf Pack at NC State. And all of a sudden, that wide receiver room looks very, very good, I think.
Yeah. And this is exactly why you keep those connections, you keep those relationships, you keep recruiting kids all throughout their cycle in college football. NC State went after him pretty hard as a recruit. They obviously couldn't compete with the guys like Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, who wanted him badly as well. And that just shows how good of a player he was. He chose Ohio State, which nobody can blame him for, right? Ohio State's known, him and Brian Hartline, known for recruiting and developing these elite wide receivers for the NFL draft. Obviously, that's the goal of a lot of these 5-star players. But yeah, he got homesick, and North Carolina State seemed like a very obvious, very clean fit for him, and it worked out well for both sides. I think I would temper expectations just a little bit. I don't think he's going to come in and be like Kevin Concepcion was a year ago as a true freshman. But hey, I do think he's a really nice compliment. He's a bigger body guy, 6'2", over 200 pounds. A nice little diversity to have in the room there, which is important, obviously. And going into ACC where some corners leaving from the NFL draft. Duke's got some guys leaving. Clemson's got some guys leaving. Florida
Florida
State's got some
State,
guys leaving. So like there's some
Miami's losing
some
their safeties.
there's some good wide receivers there and some exploration to be had of some DBs in the ACC and Noah Rogers and crew there in NC State. That's a perfect fit. I think this is awesome for a program that really wants to compete in 2024 in the ACC. Noah Rogers is obviously the first piece of many into getting that done.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I for some reason have a soft spot for Dave Dorn, and like a lot of people say, like, oh, he's not a very likable guy. To me, I think he's the most likable guy. He's the most relatable coach of all time. He just says what's on his mind. He lets media reporters know that they're doing a bad job. He defends his players, right? Like those are
Hmm.
the kind of things that I like. Like if I was playing for a coach that I would want to see. And you know me, I love me some Robert and I as an offensive coordinator.
Still on the Robert
I
and I train.
still love Robert and I, even though this year was a little interesting. They won what? They won 9 games, 10 games.
9 games. They went 9-3 in the regular season.
Come on, and then they lost the bowl game. I'm assuming.
Yeah, they
Oh yeah,
lost
they
to
lost. Um, who did they lose to? Shoot, Brennan Armstrong legacy game. Come on. Uh,
jeez.
Gosh, oh,
No,
Kansas State in the Pop
thank you.
Tart
Yeah.
Bowl. Oh,
Yeah.
what
How
a
could we
legacy
forget?
game! How could we forget? So I don't know. I like this a lot. I'm excited. So expect me to be high on NC State this year, not just because of this, but just because I always am. Let's talk about Kamari Ramsey. Got pretty versatile player, a lot of free safety snaps, but also played some in the slot corner for UCLA. Following his defensive coordinator, Deanna Lynn, to USC. And look, he's a big guy, 6'1", 205 for DB. I mean, like that's a respectable size. He tackles well. He does a lot of things well. And I could definitely see why Dan Lynn wanted to bring him over to USC, especially I mean that room needs help. It needs all the help that it can get. Especially, I mean, Damani Jackson left, right? He's going to Bama.
Hmm.
So I like this a lot. And if you look on PFF too, for what it's worth, right? You can use your eyeballs, but he graded out pretty well in PFF as well. So he must be doing something right. He had a lot of coverage snaps this year, and I think This is definitely a good ad for USC in the new era of USC defense.
Yeah, this was a big time get for USC. You mentioned, yeah, he very versatile guy, safety, slot corner. He's got 3 years of eligibility left there, which is important for USC trying to build and grow that defense. To me, what is signifies just green flag, green flag, green flag is when a guy enters the transfer portal because of a coach leaving, or a guy follows his coach leaving in the transfer portal. That to me speaks volume because not only does Danton Lynn like had a chance to work with him right for a couple years at UCLA, but he also doesn't have to bring him over with him. Like if he's at UCLA, they're stuck with him, right? And he just happens to be on the roster and happens to be the best player at that position, and he plays him, right? But if he goes to USC and he says, "Hey, I want Kamari Ramsey on this defense," to me that speaks volumes about the character and kind of player he is because of how high he thinks of him. And to be honest, like you've seen that with Washington, you've seen that with other coaches, bring players along with him. To me, this is just like boom, 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 radar, radar, radar. This guy's a really good player. And Danton Lynn, a very respected defensive mind, also believes that after getting to work with him, after getting to know him, and getting a second chance to recruit him and a second chance to say no if he didn't want him, but he wanted him badly. He's a guy that's from Sierra Canyon, California, a highly rated recruit. He's a top 50 guy in the portal. This fits all around. For UCLA, it's a big time loss. Their defense was really, really good last year and was the bright spot on a pretty bad offense and a pretty underwhelming team in general. Their defense was damn good, and Kamar Ramsey played a big time role in that, along with an elite front four. But yeah, I love this for USC.
I mean, you got to start. He played like 80 some snaps in the box too. I mean, I haven't watched enough Kamari Ramsey film to just say, "Oh, this guy tough as nails." But if Deanne Lynn's comfortable putting him in the box a lot and in slot corner where he's going to be required to be physical, whether it's with a tight end or in press man, whatever that is that he's doing in slot, I would hope like USC is in for an awakening going to the Big Ten. They have to be more physical. And if Kamari
Mhm.
Ramsey can be one of those guys that can be more physical, he's a good tackler. He's a good tackler. You need USC has not had a lot of that at all. They've not had a lot of good tacklers. They need they need toughness and they need good tacklers and they need physical players. I think Kamari Ramsey potentially can become that player. He's young,
Yeah,
like you said.
yeah,
He's young.
and versatility, like you mentioned, is a big deal, especially going to the Big Ten, where you're going to see teams. One week you're going to see Iowa, Minnesota, the Nebraskas of the world that just Iowa or Illinois just line it up and pound the ball, and you have to play in the box. You have to get your nose wet and physical, and then you're going to see, you know, Ohio State, Maryland, obviously UCLA, USC teams that like to spread you out and throw the ball, and you're gonna have to adjust week to week and have to have players that are versatile in a scheme is super important in a diverse conference like the Big Ten is now. So that to me, that's another huge plus for this defense and Lincoln Riley that understands exactly what you just mentioned. But you have to be more physical at the point of attack, and you have to have physical players and tackle better. And tackling is coaching and attitude. And D'Anton Lynn and Kamar Ramsey, I believe, bring that to this defense.
Yeah. The funny thing is though, is like this was a huge win for them against Ohio State. I remember like when they won this, it was like a big deal. But then it just opened the door for Caleb Downs to go to Ohio State. So in hindsight, it's pretty funny how that worked out. But Kamari Ramsey is a good player, so the USC will be happy with him. Let's talk about another Kamari. Let's talk about Kamari Wilson, safety from Florida, going to Arizona State. What do you like about Kamari Wilson?
Super athlete, right? He was a high recruit out of high school. He's, I believe, from Florida, or he went to IMG. I'm sorry, he was at IMG, and obviously went to going to Arizona State. Very good friends with Jaden Rashada. He played in the first 3 games of the season and then kind of sat out because he was going to transfer. So you never know what's going on there. Don't like to make assumptions on what happens, but obviously it ends up over with Kenny Dillingham and Arizona State. Who knows? I don't know if he's going to be a success. I don't know if he's going to be a star for them, but I also know like he's a body and a talent in that room that they didn't really have a ton of, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And it's a win. That's a good thing. He's a young guy that can still develop and get better. He's got 3 years of eligibility. And if you're Arizona State and you're just kind of throwing, pieces of paper or what paper at a wall and see what sticks. Like this is one of those where if it hits, it hits. It's awesome. If not, you've got a really good special teams player that can fly down and make plays for you on all phases of special teams.
Yeah, and what's interesting, like for how you saw in a couple games, Arizona State just getting manhandled, right? And the reason for that was because their roster just didn't have enough players on it. It just didn't. And that's what happens, in the first year head coaching at Power Five level. Sometimes, especially like the way that that program was left, where there was literally a coaching coup inside trying to take the program down. So definitely a tough job for Kenny Dillingham. Getting a guy like Kamari Wilson, I think points green lights. I think it points arrows in the right direction. I think if you get talented guys like this and talented guys like Jaden Rashada on the team, if you pile up enough of them, like I think Arizona State, they've had that terrible AD there for however many years. Arizona State should be good at every sport. They have the money, they have the fan base, they have uh, I was gonna say academics, but more like money from the students attending, specifically out of state students, the way that Bama does. There's a lot to like their geography. I mean, come on. Like this is a program that I think people have talked about for years being a sleeping giant. And they've had some pretty good teams and they've had some really good talents. And they've had some NFL players. I really like Kenny Dillingham as a coach. And I think like maybe not next year. It'll be interesting to see the price that they put Arizona State to win the Big 12 next year. But this is a team to look out for, like really, really soon, I think. Like their defense with Brian Ward was frisky. It was frisky. You didn't have a lot of players on it that like were really high level talent. You were working with not a lot of depth at all. Terrible injuries everywhere. They were kind of frisky. They stayed in some games. Washington, they stayed in that game. Like that they were frisky in some games, man. They were frisky. Better than people think, I think. So this is a good get for Arizona State for sure. And we'll see. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of him play. We haven't seen him play a lot, but he could be a really good talent. They wanted him really bad, so I'm gonna let them cook over there.
Yeah, and if Georgia wants him bad out of high school, I mean, to me, that's a pretty good sign of the talent he is. Now we'll see if he gets developed here at Arizona State. It was probably going to take a couple of years at Florida, anyways, to develop and really see the field in an impactful and meaningful way. But also, he's a big body dude, physical, and going in terms of fit going into the new Big 12. It's important to have guys like that can match up with teams that want to pound the ball, like Utah, maybe BYU, new look Baylor, teams like that, Iowa State. I guess Cincinnati, West Virginia, a lot of teams like that maybe you don't see quite a ton of in the Pac-12, but Kenny Dillingham understands the changing landscape of his environment and his teams and the conference he's going to be joining, and obviously sees this as a need and a athletic freak that he can bring in and hopefully make some plays for his defense.
Speaking of athletic freaks, let's talk about Des Riggs. Who is Des Riggs? Well, Des Riggs is a player whom reclassified from the 2024 class to the 2023 class this past year. He was a five-star, unanimous number one cornerback in the transfer report, or in the in the 2024 class. Brothers with Eli Ricks, another highly talented, highly sought after recruit. He had his playbook issues, whatever. But Des Ricks, you didn't hardly see the field for Alabama at all because they had three NFL corners there, four NFL corners there, right? All you did, he reclassifies to 2023, right, and becomes a four-star instead of a five-star, and becomes the number three cornerback instead of number one in most people's ratings. And you just gave him a year with Nick Saban and a college weight room. That's all they did. He still has 4 years of eligibility. He's going to Texas A&M, and that is a school that certainly needs secondary. I think Des Ricks is a very, very, very good addition for Texas A&M, and I think this could work out. This could work out.
Yeah, and you'd know better than I would. They did bring in a ton of guys in the secondary, but it seems like they all kind of complement each other in a really, really unique and special way. And that that Mike Elko and staff did a really good job of identifying different players. Yes, maybe they're all listed at cornerback or safety, but they all do different things and bring different things to your team. With Desrick's is a guy, not only is he obviously a freak, tall, athletic, long, which everybody's looking for these days in cornerbacks, but also a guy that can be a lockdown corner for you, a boundary guy if needed to, if everything hits and clicks for him. But then you bring in other guys, Will Howard, some safety guys. You'd know better than
Or
I would, but
Willie, you mean? Willie.
yeah, thank you. Will Lee, both guys from Kansas State. But yeah, Will Lee and others in the secondary there. And it just really complements each other super, super well. He was a guy that was pretty highly sought after. A&M did a good job of getting him on campus right away, getting him locked down, and getting him to commit to you. And also, like you mentioned, yeah, he was young. He was raw in a cornerback room that was loaded. Not only your first two cornerbacks are going to go in the first round, but then your third and fourth guys are transferring elsewhere, going to be starters in the SEC and the ACC. Like, this was a loaded room. And yes, you mentioned weight room, coaching, Nick Saban, T Rob, all that good stuff that you get in a year developing at Alabama instead of IMG, right? Which does a very good job in their own right, but also it's different. Going every day to play against Isaiah Bond and other really talented receivers on Alabama's roster and practice every day. And so yeah, this is well done for A&M. I love this for them. I think it immediately helps your secondary this year and also for years to come, which was super important because a lot of the guys you are bringing in maybe only have 1 or 2 years in that secondary, or especially that cornerback spot. But then also after that, the future looks bright with Des Ricks.
I agree. That corner room that they brought in, like the transfers, it is loaded. It's going to be really competitive. It's going to be really, really competitive in the spring. I'm excited. And what I love about that is that Des Ricks sees five other cornerbacks, highly rated transfers committed to Texas A&M. And he says, yeah, give me a piece. That's what
Yeah.
he said. So I
Well, and
love that.
he did it at Bama too. He did it at Bama. He's like, yeah, I'll reclassify early. I'll play for you, Nick Saban. And Nick Saban leaves and he transfers out like a lot of other guys did. No fault to the kid at all because he was supposed to be coached under the GOAT, a secondary coach, and Nick Saban, and decides to, hey, yeah, let me reopen it up. And you mentioned it. Also, Tyreek Chappelle comes back too. Not a transfer guy, but a guy that somehow
Yeah.
gets out eligibility. We'll see if it works out. But he's a very talented corner himself. So like that's awesome. You mentioned I love that. I love that.
Let's talk about Quinshawn Judkins. You know, we don't like to speculate around here, but feels like he's getting paid a little bit more at Ohio State than he was at Ole Miss. In fact, I'm pretty sure that one of like the collective treasurers or presidents or whatever of like one of the Ole Miss collectives liked a tweet by someone that said it was like Lane Kiffin running backs, like they were all like super super successful, and like Quinshawn Judkins, while he did have more elite numbers than the other guys, like 1,300 yards in both years and 17 total touchdowns. That's absurd. But it was Lane Kiffin running backs. They were all good, So I think one of the boosts, it was like, this is why you don't pay a running back under Lane Kiffin or whatever. And one of the boosters like liked the tweet or whatever. So funny. I believe the speculation is that he was asking for a lot of money, but he's going to get it at Ohio State. But it's going to be Traven Henderson's back, right?
Yeah, no, I think this was a deal that made sense for both those guys. Trayvon Henderson more than Judkins, but Judkins, I guess both guys. Trayvon Henderson has battled a lot of injuries in his career at Ohio State. If you followed him closely, super explosive back, dynamic runner, really changed that offense once he got back healthy, and helped almost a limited passing game with Kyle McCord, and really gave him an explosive running game that really complemented each other very well. And Quinshon Judkins is a guy that you can give the ball 30 times a game that you love, and he's a workhorse guy that'll get you those tough carries, but also can explosive runs out of the backfield, pass protection. He's a complete back, a guy that's was very highly sought after in the portal, rightfully so, and decided to get a bag and an NIL check that he wanted, he thought he deserved, and good for him. I do think he wanted to also save touches and mileage for his NFL career, right? Like you look at a guy that was almost gonna have almost 1,000 touches on his name in just 3 short years, entering the NFL draft next year. And he wanted to be able to A, make a lot of money, B, also compete for national championship, which he could have done at Ole Miss and Ohio State, but also save longevity for his pro career while also accumulating and adding value to his name. It makes a ton of sense for Ohio State and Quinshon Judkins. But yeah, you mentioned it. Like Is it worth paying a running back all that money? Who knows? But if you have the money to spend, there's no salary cap and college football NIL stuff, you might as well. And obviously, it gives you insurance for both those guys. Not only does it lessen the likelihood of injury, but also helps you get fresh legs come November and December when it's going to be a grueling conference slate for you in the Big 12 or in the Big 10. And then you also have to win, what, three or four more games in the playoffs just to win a national title. Having two backs and having depth is going to be harder than ever in this era. And Ohio State's doing a really good job of doing that, especially at key positions.
Yeah. Now we joked about Lane Kiffin running backs always doing well. This isn't a big loss. Let's not be mistaken though. This is a big loss. Okay. If you talk to
Mhm.
any writer on the beat for Ole Miss, any beat writer, they will all tell you like freshman year Quinshon Judkins was the best running back that they've ever seen at Ole Miss. And they've seen Deuce McAllister. I thought they ran for 3,000 yards there at that school. If Quinshon Judkins had stayed one more year at Ole Miss, he would have shattered any record Deuce McAllister could have possibly had at Ole Miss. Shattered. Shattered. Deuce McAllister like 300 yards or 3,000 yards. Quinshon Judkins is like 2,700. He would have shattered. He's he is better than Deuce McAllister. So that is incredible, right? So it is a big loss. But like you said, for Ohio State, this is a nice little get there. And it was a problem these last couple of years. Like that, the depth in that running back room was a problem. It was a problem when you had these guys getting injured. And I don't know whether that's running back coaches or strength and conditioning. I don't know what was happening over there, or just dumb luck. But this is a guy that is going to boost that offense. And he's another one of those, like, Ohio State only took five guys, right, in the transfer portal, and they're all elite. They're all elite. Julian Sain, Quinshon Judkins, I mean, Caleb Downs. They're all elite, elite, elite guys. So I think Quinshon Judkins is going to fit right in this Ohio State running back room. I think he'll get touches immediately. I think he's going to get good looks. I think this is a good move for him. So uh, he'll be likely in the draft next year if I had to guess.
Yeah, and you mentioned his freshman year. He was brought into a running back room as a underrated three-star recruit from the state of Alabama. Obviously, Bama got on him late and really wanted him, but he said no. Committed to Lane Kiffin and did a very good job getting it in on him early back in his recruitment days in high school. But yeah, they brought in. Remember they brought in Zach Evans, a former five-star guy, highly rated guy that averaged almost 7 yards carry at TCU, come over and play his final year of ball at Ole Miss. And then also Ulysses Bentley, another highly rated guy from SMU, right? Two guys that have averaged, 5, 6 yards a carry. He came in and was the workhorse and immediately upgrade better than all those guys and really outshined everybody in that room and really gave Lane Kiffin's offense a super dynamic, part of it in the run game because yes, they brought in Jackson Dart, but it didn't really take off the passing game that much until this year. He really bought him a year of development with the new roster, with the new wide receivers, with the new quarterback to really get it done there for Lane Kiffin. And for everything that happens with Lane Kiffin and all the flash and all the Twitter cryptic tweets and the trolling, all that happens, he loves to play smash mouth football offensively and run the ball really, really well. And Quinshon Judkins allowed him to do that for 2 years now, even though he battled injuries this year, was still super productive. Over 15 touchdowns this year. You said almost 1,200 yards. That's a tough loss for him. This is a massive loss for him. I know a lot of things have been made about, everyone runs the ball well in Lane Kiffin's offense. You can't overpay a running back, but also like this is a massive loss. He is a special player, and he's maybe one of two or three running backs that are actually worth that kind of money, according to somebody. And obviously, Ohio State thought so and gave him it. This is a good job for Judkins and Ohio State for kind of having a mutually beneficial relationship here, being able to maximize your value and also get a lot of money for it, and not only now but also in your future.
AJ Harris. AJ Harris might be a really special talent. He just might be really good. He saw, I think, 80 some snaps at corner for Georgia. That doesn't include special teams, right? He was well over 100 snaps total if you include special teams, right? He's really good. And I think he's going to a really good situation. He's transferring from Georgia and he's going to Penn State with Terry Smith coaching those cornerbacks like he has for the last decade at Penn State. just breeding NFL talent there from Joey Porter, Kalen King, Amani Oruwariye, was it Carter Campbell, or is that his name? Gosh, Campbell, whatever. I just uh I just really like this landing spot. He's one of the top rated cornerbacks in the transfer portal. He's a highly rated recruit. If you're a highly rated recruit and you got reasonable playing time at Georgia in that secondary, I'm gonna have to believe that you're a pretty good player.
Yeah, no, I do think he was a guy in the transfer portal that Auburn wanted really bad. He grew up just minutes away from campus there in Phoenix City, Alabama. They had him on visit. Obviously, Penn State gets the win there, and obviously immediate boost because do have to replace all those studs in the secondary. And obviously, when you're playing, Ohio State and everything they bring, you're playing guys like UCLA, USC, Oregon, Washington, and some of the high flying passing attacks that are coming over in the Pac-12. Premium corners, guys that have AJ Harris's tools, don't grow on trees all the time. And for you to get him on campus after a year of development at Georgia and to come in, and not because he was a bust, he came in because he didn't have playing time at Georgia and he saw a better chance to maximize his value at a place like Penn State and to play at a massive stadium and arena and football atmosphere in the Big Ten there. Good for them. This is a big time win, a big time recruiting win for James Franklin and staff there. Yeah, that's all I really got. I think this is awesome.
Yeah. 6'1", 190, toolsy, good athlete. I love it. I love the spot. Love the player, love the spot. Let's talk about Jaden Mayava. Talk about an interesting transfer portal run. First, it's speculated that he's going to the transfer portal. Says, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm staying right here. Then he does enter the transfer portal. Even after his offensive coordinator came back, he was he was projected to like potentially be the next Notre Dame offensive coordinator after Jared Parker left to go take the Troy job. And Marion stays as the offensive coordinator. And then Jaden Mayava says, see ya, I'm going to Georgia. Not so fast, says Lee Corso, and he flips over to USC. He'll be potentially backing up Miller Moss. I believe he'll be backing up Miller Moss, but he's just a freshman. He was a true freshman this year, and he had 20 total touchdowns, 3,000 passing yards, only 10 interceptions. Those 10 interceptions were just freshman interceptions, playing against teams that were more talented than you. You know, I am very he's 6'4". I mean, this guy, I cannot wait to see what he looks like under Lincoln Riley in about a year or two. About a
Yeah,
year or
and
two.
credit to Maeva for recognizing his value and being able to maximize it. Yes, obviously we would have loved to see him stay at UNLV. We were massive Mountain West followers this year. We covered Barry Odom and UNLV a ton, and obviously he did special things in that conference to be able to get him to a spot to potentially win a title, which is super impressive for that team in that city. But yeah, I do think it was very educated. We talked about this with Grayson McCall and a couple other quarterbacks that found really, really nice landing spots, right? Who better than to go? Not only do you recognize and be okay with sitting for a year or two at USC while making some money in the NIL game, but also being developed by Lincoln Riley, right? The future of Lincoln Riley's quarterback room looked very bleak. And just about 3 weeks ago, with Caleb Williams off the NFL draft, Malachi Nelson in the portal. It was just Miller Moss in there, and then he has that massive bowl game, and then you get Maeva in the portal. So not only is the short term and the long term future of the quarterback position set for you, that's awesome. That is really good stuff for USC and Maeva. Yes, you mentioned he went to Georgia, and that was also to be in a backup role to back up a guy like Carson Beck to be developed there and to play with a bunch of very good players as well. This is what the portal is for, in my opinion. I guess maybe not, but it's also like it's pretty impressive for a young guy to not just like fall for the hot landing spot, some guy promising playing time, but hey, we're gonna come here. You come here, you're gonna get developed, and this is the best thing for your future in terms of what your goals are, reaching the NFL, winning championships at this level. Yeah, sucks for UNLV. We love to see G5 quarterbacks stay and power elite players stay in the G5, and obviously he was a guy that played a massive role in the conference shapes, and this is a huge blow for UNLV. It was gonna lead them to be one of the favorites in the conference there next year. But good for him for getting a payday and also being developed by one of the best in the sport.
Let's talk about Zalen's Hurd or Zalen's Hurd. I still don't know how to pronounce it. I said Zalen's on air at Texas today, so someone in the comments can let me know if I just looked like a bozo live on radio. So fill me in, CD. Who is this Hurd character that we've heard so much about?
So he's a guy primarily an offensive tackle in his days, dating back to high school and college. You got two bookend studs there at LSU. Obviously, two underclassmen. So guys that he wouldn't even have playing time until his junior year, would have to sit out another year or so. He's a guy that didn't transfer because of lack of playing time or he didn't deserve it. He was a guy that even when he got on the field, popped and shined. His comparison is a guy like Ronnie Stanley, and that is not to be taken lightly. Ronnie Stanley was a guy at Notre Dame that was super athletic, freak of nature, size, speed, athleticism, arm length, all that good stuff that you want in offense, an all-pro offensive tackle in the NFL. Zalance Hurd can do that, and he pairs with a guy like Nico and to be able to do special things for them in a time where Tennessee's weak spot this year at times was the offensive line, and to get one of your bookend tackles
Depth, specifically
to be
depth. Like when
solidified.
they were hurt, like it
Yes.
showed against Florida specifically. It hurt.
Yeah, and he Zalance Hurd is a guy that's from the state of Louisiana, so that obviously didn't obviously not easy to draw him away from LSU. But when you have Emory Jones and Will Campbell, they're two underclassmen that are just future first and second round picks. There, it is what it is. And Zalance Hurd, found some value. Tennessee got him late in the cycle, which is awesome. Like you mentioned, this year was better than ever. We've seen at the tackle position, Hayden Proctor, Zalance Hurd, two guys in the same class, highly rated guys, freaking nature, size, speed, weight, all that good stuff that you want in an offensive tackle, and with playing experience at the Power Five level with a true freshman, and that doesn't come along all the time. And obviously, Iowa got a big time guy in Proctor, but Lance Hurd is a huge get for them.
Yeah, and I on radio this morning, there's some questions that came in that were like, why this was for Texas A&M football. It's like, why haven't we landed a surefire starter on the offensive line in the transfer portal, specifically at center and offensive tackle? Well, because offensive line is a premium position, and there are not a lot of guys in the portal like you just talked about. Like Lance Hurts they don't exist in the portal very often. This is actually probably the best offensive line cycle, like portal cycle that we've seen in a while, especially at the top. Caden Proctor, Hurd. It is a little
Washington's
bit
guys.
different. Yeah, it is different. So yeah, sure. A&M didn't land those guys, but not every team's gonna land them. You were lucky to land them. A&M, first of all, oh, why didn't we get a guy in the portal? The guy, his name's Chase Pasantis. This isn't the Chase Pasantis video, but that was the guy you landed in the portal by not letting him go away, right? And Pasantis, despite how much he struggled this year, he was a 4-star rated in the portal because he had 3 years of eligibility and he had SEC starting experience. Like that's what it is. I mean, that those players are valuable, valuable. So it's no wonder that Hurd was one of the best players in the transfer portal rating wise. He was a 5-star coming out of high school. Sure, he didn't get a ton of playing time, but he profiles as a starting offensive tackle in the SEC. He just couldn't find his way onto the field. He just couldn't do
he
it.
couldn't he couldn't beat out two other all SEC guys with more experience than he had. And also, like you mentioned, why aren't these guys in the portal? A couple reasons. First of all, offensive linemen more than others, the adjustment to the college football level is harder than a lot of other positions. It takes time to get your body and mind right up to speed to the college football game. So not only does it take a couple years for you to hit, by the time you're draft ready, you're just going to go to the NFL draft because you're an offensive lineman, because you take all that physical beat and all that other good stuff. And because the NFL values you that much, you're going to the NFL draft and you're going to make a ton of money there. Secondly, programs like LSU, like Alabama, like Texas, they have a ton of money dedicated to retention of guys like this, of this caliber. And because obviously this is a special scenario, first of all, Zalance Hurd is a guy that they're already paying two other tackles elite money. So they maybe can't afford a guy like him And then Caden Proctor, obviously homesick, and the coaching change there. Obviously, with the Washington guys, the coaching change there. Those are all special scenarios that doesn't come along every year. For Tennessee to get a guy like this with 2 years of eligibility at least before he has to even consider going to the NFL draft is special. I cannot say enough about this and the future of Tennessee football, especially next year with Nico and all the hype there on the offensive side of the football is massive. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it, and I hope Tennessee fans are excited about this because you should be.
Let's talk about Amari Niblack. I know you're a huge Amari Niblack guy, so I'm actually gonna let you. I don't know about huge, but you like Amari Niblack a lot. I will let you take this one over.
Yeah, he is a physical freak. He's a guy that does not look like a tight end, similar to OJ Howard in the past at Alabama, and also moves like a guy like Jatavian Sanders, right? Who's a freak. Obviously, Sanders is a little bit better blocker, a little bit bigger guy than Niblack is, but he's a guy that's a young guy, was an inexperienced guy this year, and took on a larger role in a passing offense that was limited, especially early in the season. And he made big time play after big time play on third down in the red zone. He was a guy that was always open, 6'4", 233 to move like that. Texas fans, you know him very well because he had a massive touchdown against you guys in that second half there. Yeah. I mean, this is a big blow for Bama. Obviously, they have guys there. CJ Dupree, they're bringing a guy like Caleb Odom. They have Robbie Oates there. That they have talent in that room, but Amari Niblack don't grow on trees. And the reason why On Three had him as a 5-star, 24/7 was not far behind as a high 4-star guy. Yeah, this is a big time get for Texas. He was the clear number one tight end in the portal, similar to guys like offensive tackle. Tight ends don't show up in the portal all the time either, right? It's another very tough position to get right at the college football level. Programs like Georgia has done a very good job of that. Alabama, Texas with Jatavian Sanders. To replace this passing offense that Texas had with guys like Jalen Hall, or I'm sorry, Isaiah Bond, Amari Niblack, Silas Bolden, Matthew Golden, guys we've all talked about. This is massive for Texas after losing, 3 or 4 guys that are elite players at the college football level, and to give Quinn Ewers enough talent and stability around him to get it done, especially with guys with major Power 5 experience and also like playmaking ability, like a lot of other guys don't have. Yeah, not Black I love.
Yeah, I think this is like a great fit. Like, I don't think there's a better fit in the country for Amari Niblack. I don't think there's a better fit. Am I correct in
No,
saying that? Like
I
they're
really
gonna use in the way
don't.
that they used Jatavian Sanders. I mean, they're gonna use, I mean,
You can
this
split
is
them out
an
like
awesome
like
fit.
at AD Mitchell too. You can split them out wide. That Sark is gonna love having Amari Niblack, and Niblack vice versa is gonna love having Sark.
Now let me ask you this. There was another Bama smaller tight end, that transferred to, Texas a few years back from city of Chicago, and he didn't work out so well. What's different about Amari Niblack than Jaleel Billingsley?
Yeah, Billingsley, I think he had some other issues off the field. I don't think he was quite on the field. The talent was undeniable with him. You saw it with Bama. You saw it at maybe spots with Texas, but not really. Niblack is a guy. This guy's head on straight. He's a guy that has legit experience at the Power 5 level. He was going to leave probably regardless of Saban leaving or not. I think it was also about the money there. I think it's no secret how much he or not. It's no secret that he is getting a good amount, deservingly so, from Texas. Yeah, I do think they have a reason to be much more optimistic than it was with Jaleel Billingsley than with Amari Niblack.
Let's get to our last guy. Let's talk about Caden Woolard. Very good player. Now we've talked about the Miami of Ohio defense because we love the MAC. We talk about the MAC. We talk about every conference on this show. Okay. We previewed quite a few Miami Ohio games, right? And every time what was brought up was that very, very, very talented, good defense. And it was led by Caden Woolard. 10 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, 43 hurries. His calling card is probably his pass rushing ability. And going to Oklahoma and Brent Venables, I know that they're going to be able to use that, having him come off the edge like that. I know that they are. This is a really good get. I know a lot of schools wanted him. He's very, very talented. The, From what I've heard, he's a great leader as well, which Oklahoma values. Brent Venables values a lot. This is this plug and play, you think?
Yeah, I think so. He's only got I believe a year or two of eligibility left. He's a guy that knows exactly what to do with his career and to maximize his potential. You mentioned Brent Venables and that defensive staff there is going to make the most out of him. He's a guy that took a big time jump from year two to year three. We loved watching him in the MAC there, obviously making plays all over the field for a really good defense, a really sound defense. Yeah, a lot of guys want him, like you mentioned, and Oklahoma's very fortunate to get him. He's a baller, and obviously Oklahoma has some talent coming in on at the high school level, but also some talent there right now. But I think Caden Woolard is good enough to go, and he's also a guy doesn't have to play 60 snaps a game, 40, 50 snaps a game. He can play 35, 40 snaps a game. You can keep him fresh for third down, and he can really make plays when it matters there in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, and by me saying that he was a really good pass rusher, I'm not saying he's not a good run defender. He's just a really good pass rusher. You need that in the SEC. Like next year, I know you lose Jaden Daniels, the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, but there are some really good quarterbacks in the SEC next year. Like really good. Like Brady Cook, we know it's better than we thought he was going to be a year ago today, right? Quinn Ewers, Connor Wigman still hasn't played a full season yet. You got Jalen Milroe coming back. Carson Beck's a dog. Nico is kind of a dude. Like you got some really, really, really good quarterbacks in the SEC. You gotta find ways to get to them. You gotta find ways to get to them. And that means pass rushers. You do see a decent amount of really good pass rushers in the portal nowadays because it feels like there are just a lot of them. There are a lot of good pass rushers. And I don't know where I was going with that. But Caden Woolard is one of them, right? So Oklahoma getting him is definitely huge. Brent Venables is going to love him. Now, it's a big loss for Miami. It's a big loss for Miami. But Miami doesn't lose a ton. They could have lost a ton. I mean, they just won the MAC championship. You would think that teams would pick their roster apart. Pick it apart. Caden Woolard is probably their biggest loss that they've had. The biggest loss. And their running back, Amos, I believe it. But he hasn't committed anywhere, I don't think. So yeah. Any thoughts like how but it feels like the sacks were pretty evenly. He was a leading sack getter, right, for Miami. But there was production from everywhere for that Miami defense. So as big of a loss as this seems, I think Miami can maybe get past it. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean they did a good job. They brought some guys from distance, Ty Wise, Matt Salopek. They do a good job of disguising blitzes and being able to be creative and making and getting after the quarterback there in the MAC. Obviously, yeah, not to diminish the talent and the playmaking ability of Caden Woolard, but yeah, I believe in that coaching staff there at Miami, Ohio. I think they'll be pretty good for next year. Obviously, one of the contenders, like they always are in the MAC. And obviously, does Brett Gabbard have another year? I know this is off
Yeah, he
topic, but
does. Yeah, he
okay, good,
does.
good. He
That's all
deserves it
you
more
need to
than
know, right?
yeah. Just as long as those other quarterbacks are not playing for you. But yeah, no, this is awesome for Oklahoma, for Caden. Happy for both those guys, but Miami will be okay.
And that'll be it for episode 55 of the Redshirt Sophomore. 55 episodes into this. That's pretty crazy. So if you guys stuck around for the full episode 55, the least you can do is give us a like, consider subscribing, right? We appreciate you guys so much. We love that our channel's been growing slowly, and it has been quite a journey. And every comment, every like, every subscription, it's a little it's endorphins, it keeps us going. So if you want more of this, there's a lot more. We got some guests potentially lined up coming on the podcast. Some nice names, guys that know what they're talking about, maybe even more so than we know, which, CD knows everything. So that means that these guys know stuff. So thank you guys so much. Make sure if you're listening on Spotify, as always, give us a 5-star rating and make sure to follow us as well. So, and a reminder to our YouTube people that we also have episodes out on Spotify. So if you're driving your car and you don't want the YouTube up, you don't want those uh what do you call screen time? That screen time to go up on your phone and give you that nasty alert that you were on your phone 6 hours on that one day. Well, you can just throw Spotify on and it won't count. So it's pretty awesome. CD, anything for us on the way out?
Yeah, just do what Matthew said. You'll be happy, we'll be happy if you subscribe and like the videos, obviously helping our channel grow, giving you guys the best content we can, and hopefully you're enjoying it. Like you said, interact with us, comment, email us, Twitter, DM us, do all the good stuff. We love talking to you guys, love hearing from you guys, and we're obviously happy to do what we do, but we love, getting that support, like you said.
Absolutely. We're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. And we will see you guys in the next one.